Hey guys, this is Cyberstrike here. Um, so, as I'm sure most of you probably know at this point, um, the legend Akira Toriyama has passed away. This happened back on March 1st, but was announced to the public last night. And to no surprise, this news was quite devastating to millions of people all across the world who were so positively impacted by the works that he created. Um, and I just wanted to take this opportunity here to share my thoughts and feelings and get them out, and to share my stories of why um, the worlds that he created were so important to me. Chiefly, Dragon Ball specifically was or has been a part of my life ever since I was a little kid. For as long as I can remember, um, Dragon Ball has been in my life, and it's always been a huge part of my life. Um, I was introduced to it by my older brother. Uh, Interestingly enough, I just realized that the original release of Dragon Ball Z in the West uh, came about the same month and year that I was actually born, which was September of 1996, which I just thought was a neat coincidence. But my brother, who's 8 years older than me, was already into Dragon Ball, and by the time I was old enough to properly be able to consume media in a capacity where it was notable to me, um, my brother introduced me to Dragon Ball Z through reruns on Toonami. I think sometimes they would replay episodes on Saturdays, because as a kid I wasn't usually allowed to stay up too late, so I didn't get to stay up at night when it came on at night, but I was able to catch, episodes here and there. Um, and I fell in love with it immediately. As long as I can even remember my earliest memories, I've always loved Dragon Ball. It just grabbed me in a way nothing else really ever has. The world, the characters, and the art of Akira Toriyama are truly something special and worthy of being celebrated. Um, I've just been spending the past 24 hours, outside of sleeping and eating and the necessities of life, um, just immersing myself and engrossing myself in the world of Dragon Ball and its music, going back and rewatching all the intros and watching some of my favorite clips and just poring over all of the beautiful posts people have been sharing all over all over the internet. My entire Twitter timeline is just nothing but reverent posts from everybody that I follow and being retweeted from other people of just the impact that this wonderful human being has had on the world. And it's been heartbreaking, but also genuinely beautiful to see how one person made something so incredible that brought so many people together across the globe to to leave such an impact that so many people would come out and share their stories and share their art and their inspirations. The amount of people who have shared how they wouldn't be where they are today were it not for his works is just incredible. The expansiveness to which his worlds and his creations have impacted the world at large is almost immeasurable. The amount of and and this is, I've always known that Dragon Ball was big, like especially, and that it had a far-reaching impact, but this whole situation has opened my eyes even more to just how much bigger it is than I even realized. And not just Dragon Ball, but his other works such as Dragon Quest. I've dabbled in. I played a demo for one, I think, and again, Toriyama's art styles always been one that stands out above all other art styles to me. There's something about it that's just so captivating. He really knew how to encapsulate adventure perfectly with his style. And you look at it and it just makes you happy. It makes you want to go on a grand adventure with your friends, you know. Um, and the level of detail that he would put into his drawings is incredible. I'm always blown away at how detailed he would get with machines or backdrops, you know. And a lot of the character designs were simpler but so effective in what he was always trying to convey. Um, but I don't have as much experience with some of those other IPs like Dragon Quest or Chrono Trigger. I do really want to play Chrono Trigger in full. I've dabbled in it. And what interested me in both of those in the first place was the fact that I knew it was Toriyama's art. His worlds just have a pull to them that's really hard to describe. Um, I also never knew about Sandland until the announcement of the game that's coming out later this year. I'm definitely looking forward to playing that and watching the film when it comes out. I knew about Doctor Slump because you know, he put the Easter eggs in Dragon Ball with Arale and Penguin Village and all of that. I've never read the Doctor Slump manga, but I think I'd like to at some point. Um, and my exposure to Dragon Ball in general was through, like I said earlier, my brother uh, with reruns on Toonami, and then I didn't even know really what anime was back then, or let alone manga. That's not something I really would have learned until much later. And for the longest time, the only animes I'd ever really seen anything of was Dragon Ball, a little bit of Gundam. This one called Zoids, which was pretty cool. And that was kind of about it for a long time. But Dragon Ball always stuck with me more than anything else. And then, you know, and there was Pokemon as well. But I remember so many times and so many hours playing around, you know, playing outside and playing with my cousin and friends, and you always play make believe and just pretend that we could go Super Saiyan or shoot a Kamehameha wave, you know, and the belief that that was actually possible. And I've heard some other people talk about this, and it's really heartwarming to see how many people just how many people had almost the same experience from this one thing, even though, you know, none of us know each other, but we're all connected through this work. And one of the things I saw somebody say that um, unlocked a memory of mine was that scene in Dragon Ball in the Buu saga, or at the beginning of it, before it starts, when Gohan's teaching Videl how to control her ki. And that whole sequence of him teaching her how to bring out the latent energy and form it into a little ball. I remember when I watched that, I tried so many times and so hard to see if maybe, just maybe, it was really possible. Maybe I would be the one, you know, to be able to finally do it. And there's just a magic there that something like this was experienced by so many people. Um, and for a long time, I had only really seen bits and pieces of Dragon Ball, episodes here or there. I'd seen enough of it to kind of know what was going on, but not coherently from start to finish, and specifically Z and a little bit of GT. But it wasn't until much later, towards the end of probably elementary school and the start of junior high, that I stumbled across the DVD box sets, or as a lot of people jokingly but lovingly refer to them as the orange bricks. Um, and I don't remember if I found it myself or if my brother or my parents found it and got me the first season. And it was from one of those stores that doesn't exist anymore. But it was one of those shops that had all kinds of DVDs and CDs and movies and games, just the smorgasbord of them, a lot of reused stuff. And we found it there and got it, and I was able to watch from the start of Z, through the Saiyan saga for the first time. And it was magical. And I watched it and rewatched it and rewatched it. And it became my goal to find and collect every single one of the box sets, because back then it was hard to find. It was really hard to actually find those box sets. I remember sometimes we'd go back to, we went back to that one store. I really don't remember the name, but we'd go back to that one store and sometimes couldn't find the next season, and then sometimes could. But every time I did get that next season, and for the majority of them, I think I probably got a season or two here or there as a gift for birthday or Christmas or something, but most of them I bought myself with money that I earned from doing, chores around the house and stuff, because I was a kid. Couldn't actually work a real job, but nor would I have. But I saved up my own money, and for a long time that was my go-to until eventually I had all of them. But every time I'd buy a new season, I wouldn't even watch it right away because I'd go back and start from the beginning. So whenever I bought season 2, I went back and I started season 1 over and watched through all of season 1 leading into season 2, and then I'd watch season 2. When season 3 came out, or rather I acquired season 3, I do the same thing. And I did that pretty much with every season until I had all of them, because it took a long time. It took probably a couple of years for me to find all of them. And I went from the beginning of Z all the way through to the end of GT. And then I finally found the box sets for original Dragon Ball, which I'd never seen any of. I don't think they, at least when I was growing up, I don't think they were playing original Dragon Ball on Toonami. It was really, really hard to find. I don't know if they ever did. I'd have to look that up. But essentially, I finally found the box sets. It was the same box sets. They weren't orange, they were blue. And Dragon Ball Z was orange, and then GT was like a lime yellow. Like safety yellow looking. But I finally found the box sets of original Dragon Ball. I think I actually found those at Best Buy, so they were starting to become more easily acquirable, and I was able to get those quicker, I think. But I was able to watch through original Dragon Ball for the first time, and it was truly an incredible experience as somebody who I'd been such a big fan of Z and GT for such a long time. And I also grew up playing the games. My cousin had the Budokai games on his PlayStation, so we'd always play those when I went over to his house. And then later on, when I got my Xbox 360, I remember getting Raging Blast 2 and playing that until the disc literally cracked, which was really sad. But I did I played that game so much. I went into like the alternate story timelines and was trying to like complete all of them. And some of them were actually really hard. I'd honestly love to go try and find a copy of that again. But when that one broke, it really bummed me out. But I don't remember if I couldn't find another copy of it or not. But I remember going to GameStop because I wanted a new Dragon Ball game. I was like, I need a new one because my one and only one broke. And I went to GameStop, and I wasn't really an internet kid when I was younger. I didn't really get on the internet like a lot of other kids did. I hear all these wonderful stories about people talking about getting on like message boards and looking up, things about the show, and I find that stuff really cool. But I just wasn't a computer kid. I didn't really spend much time on the computer, and when I did, it was usually supervised, which is a good thing as a kid. But yeah, I went to GameStop and I picked up Ultimate Tenkaichi, and back then, as a kid, 'cause that game's not amazing, With hindsight, it's not a great video game, but the thing that made me buy it was that you could make your own customizable Saiyan, which was like mind blowing to kid me. And I put more hours into that game than I probably should have, but I enjoyed it. In spite of what it was, the ability to make your own character and go through that story mode and use all of the fighting styles of the cast characters and all their attacks and stuff was just so cool to me. And for a long time, it was the only Dragon Ball game I had until I think Xenoverse came out. Um, yeah, and it was amazing. I'll come back to the games in a minute. I need to touch back on watching original Dragon Ball for the first time. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I'm just kind of doing this raw off the cuff because I just want it to be real, and I want to share my true feelings and thoughts about all this and my experiences. Um, but watching original Dragon Ball for the first time was an incredible experience because I knew all these characters as they were in Z and as they were in the games, but I never knew their origins, where they came from, how they got started. And Dragon Ball really perfectly encapsulated the concept of a mystical adventure, where right from the get go, you're greeted with incredible characters, kooky characters, crazy situations, this wonderful world to explore with these magic magic orbs called Dragon Balls that grant wishes. Goku is a 10-year-old who can bench press a car and take a bullet to the head with just stinging. you know, and it was so funny to see how almost every single friend that he had in Z was originally an antagonist of some degree, lesser or greater. I mean, even when he meets Bulma, she runs him over with a car and then shoots him in the head. And then Oolong's like kidnapping kids and stuff, and Yamcha's a bandit. Tien and Chaozu just kind of jerks at first, and then of course King Piccolo was an evil demon before we knew that they were aliens, and then finding out that there was a King Piccolo before the Piccolo that we know in Dragon Ball was mind-boggling. But it was so cool to see a deeper exploration of this world that I loved and all of these characters that I'd come to know and love, and to get to see how they started. And I think, really thinking back on it now, I think Dragon Ball is what created my love for these expansive worlds with deep lore, deep characters, wacky archetypes. Just the amount of world building done in Dragon Ball was incredible. You have all the crazy animal people running around. There's dinosaurs just walking around. you know? The king's a dog. Um, and then they start shooting energy beams out of their hands. And something I really, really liked about original Dragon Ball was its emphasis on martial arts and so many of the fights, which is one of the main draws, of course, of Dragon Ball. I think the two main draws would be the fighting, the action, and the adventure, and it does both of them better than anything. But I was amazed at how fun the fights in original Dragon Ball are, with there being so much less like energy beams and world shattering, blasts and blowing up mountains and stuff, but the actual martial arts and the choreography and direction of the fight scenes is fantastic, and the animation was incredible. Particularly, one of my one of my favorite fights in the whole entirety of the series is Goku versus Piccolo at the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai or World Martial Arts Tournament. And man, they nailed it so beautifully. I always bring that up as my number one pick for my favorite tournament arc in all of anime. And there's some great ones out there, like the Dark Tournament and Yu Yu Hakusho and the Chunin games and Naruto and so many others, but nothing will ever beat that for me. And really, again, as it has done with so many things, I think Dragon Ball really set the trend for what a tournament arc should be. Something else I want to touch on is how Dragon Ball was my gateway to the greater world of anime. As I mentioned earlier, for a long time, Dragon Ball was the only anime I really cared about, and I didn't even really know what anime was, to be honest. But I remember being in high school and people talking about Naruto and stuff, and asking me if I watched that, and I was like, not really. It just never quite appealed to me. I'm more of a Dragon Ball person, and it took me quite a while to really garner an interest in any other anime, but a couple of the first ones I got into was because they were previews at the beginning of the DVD box sets that I owned, which I watched on repeat for years and years. And there was several ones on there, and a couple of them I still haven't watched. I'd like to actually find them and watch them. One of them was Sergeant Frog, which looked really kooky, and another one was this one called Blue Gender, which I've tried to find, but to no success. But the two that drew my interest from back then was Full Metal Alchemist, the original, and Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple, both of which I have watched, and both of which were fantastic, and ironically enough, both of which never continued. Obviously, Full Metal Alchemist got Brotherhood, which I watched quite a bit later on, and I do think that is the superior way to watch it. That being said, I still think the original holds merit, and I still find it enjoyable. Kenichi was just fun, and it kind of reminded me of Dragon Ball in several ways, being, martial arts focused, and a lot of the characters having crazy strength and stuff, but it also had a similar humor to it and that lightheartedness to it that I think was really special. And I think it just got announced recently that one's actually coming back, which is crazy. They're going to actually continue it, so I'm excited about that. But slowly over time, there were some other ones I started learning about as I started getting more into it. I remember watching the Soul Society arc of Bleach on Netflix because that was all that they had at the time. And I really fell in love with Bleach because a lot of the action in Bleach really reminded me of Dragon Ball. It was so cool, like Flash Step and Getsuga Tensho and Spirit Power being very similar to Key in a lot of ways. Um, and another one I wanted to watch really badly was Cowboy Bebop. That's one of my favorite anime of all time as well. I didn't watch it until quite a bit later in its full capacity, but I knew about it for a long time, and that one's a timeless classic. Um, Funnily enough, it probably took me 4 or 5 times to actually get into Naruto. Uh, I tried watching the first episode multiple times, and this was back during a period where I was still new to anime, and some of the weirder sides of it hadn't quite connected with me yet. But after watching some other shows, I finally got into Naruto, and I gave it an actual shot. I watched the first episode, and then I watched a few more episodes, and by the time Kakashi showed up, I was like, I love this. This is incredible. And I continued the whole series, and I think just the original was available on Netflix. And as somebody who's always been one to watch the English versions, trying to find that of Naruto was actually hard. So I ended up buying it all digitally on my Xbox because that was where I could find it. Um, and Naruto became one of my favorite anime of all time. And then some years later, I got into One Piece. Finally, it took a while for me to get into that one because I thought the art style was really weird looking, which a lot of people have said the same thing. But once I gave it a shot, it it really reminded me a lot of Dragon Ball in its sense of adventure, and it makes complete sense. Learning that both Kishimoto and Oda looked up to Toriyama as a source of inspiration as well as being a mentor and a friend. And you can see so clearly in their works the inspiration they took. And that's a compliment, you know. Um, another anime, I don't know if it has any direct ties. I haven't seen anything officially, but it wouldn't surprise me, I mean, pretty much all shonen anime can trace itself back to Dragon Ball. But another show that really resonated with me, and I think I watched this before Naruto, was Fairy Tail. And again, it exuded so many of the same qualities Dragon Ball did, um, about adventure, and Fairy Tail especially having a big emphasis on friendship, which is a pretty big theme in Dragon Ball as well. But having that sense of adventure and a quirky humor to it, and a fun world, and a great art style. Uh, Mashima is probably one of my other favorite art styles out there. And I fell in love with that too. And all of this, again, just stems and relates back to my love for Dragon Ball. And I think, going back to Naruto, that was kind of my last like gate that I needed to break through in order to open the floodgates to consuming anime of all kinds. Because up until that point, I pretty much just watched things that were shonen jump, or more action oriented and stuff. But since then, I've watched so much anime of all different kinds: slice of life, romance, comedy, ecchi, even just all of it. And it's become my favorite medium. But nothing has ever surpassed Dragon Ball for me personally, and I don't think anything ever will. I mean, it's my favorite work of fiction, period. Um, and its influence just cannot be overstated because it introduced not just me, but so many others in the West to the wacky world of anime. And I'm so thankful for that. I've had so many wonderful experiences and so much enjoyment has come from the world of anime, and so many of my friends and love watching it, and we talk about it all the time and make more new memories. And I get to being the probably the biggest anime nerd of all of my friends now. I watch a new series and I get to recommend that new series to my friends, and we get to talk about it. And sometimes they watch something and they recommend it to me, and I go watch it, and it's great. And even all of the modern, um, really popular anime like My Hero and Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, Attack on Titan, like all of these shows would potentially not even exist, or at the very least not be what they are today without Dragon Ball. So I just wanted to share that with everyone, and share my story about how Dragon Ball has introduced me to this wonderful medium and all of the wonderful people who love it. But coming back to the game side of things, we eventually got Xenoverse, and that blew my mind completely. I thought Ultimate Tenkaichi was crazy for having the Saiyans, and then Xenoverse comes out, and you can make your own Saiyans, you can make your own Earthlings, you can make your own Frieza race, you can make your own Namekian or your own Buu, your own Majin. And the Frieza one was the one that was just the coolest to me, because while Cell has probably always been my favorite villain, as far as being a pure villain, since Vegeta is my favorite character, but he becomes a hero later. It takes him a long time, and we'll talk about Vegeta in a minute. But as much as Cell's always been my favorite villain, Frieza was always amazing, right? I mean, there's a reason why they brought Frieza back in Super, because he's just fantastic, and he's kind of the perfect antithesis to Goku. As much as both Piccolo and Vegeta were also that, but Frieza is pure evil, and I hope he honestly hope he always stays that way, because he makes for that perfect reoccurring villain. But I always loved his designs. He was so cool, all of his different transformations, and then I saw the Cooler movie, and Cooler was exactly that. He was just Frieza but cooler to me. Like his design, very very likely being partially inspired by like the Predator, or maybe even Shredder, but or vice versa, depending on when those came out. Anyway, it doesn't matter as much. He was just really cool looking, right? So I always loved that design. And then Xenoverse came out, and I was like, oh, I can just make my own Frieza race with like Cooler's head and like all this other cool stuff. And then they introduced like the Time Patrol stuff, and I later learned that some of that comes from that Dragon Ball Online game, which I never got to play, but I always thought it'd be cool if they brought that back somehow, in some like official capacity. But yeah, Xenoverse was everything I wanted and more, as a fan of this wonderful series. And then Xenoverse 2 came out, and it just kind of did everything but better. In some respects, maybe not as much, but as far as the combat and everything goes. And Xenoverse 2 is probably one of the games I've spent the most time on, at least in a trackable manner. I've spent hundreds of hours in that game. And in fact, I just recently finished acquiring like all of the super attacks from the parallel quests and stuff. And then that's not even to mention, Dragon Ball Fighters. As somebody who's only ever really been a casual in regards to fighting games, like proper fighting games, Dragon Ball Fighters really made me want to get more into that sector. And it ended up introducing me to the world of streaming as well, Twitch, because I remember when that game was coming out, I was just, when it first got announced, I was like, this is amazing. This looks like the anime. I cannot believe it. This is crazy. I'd only had a little bit of experience with some fighting games. I think I'd played Injustice 2, like the Injustice games, Mortal Kombat X, a little bit of Street Fighter. I remember I played some Marvel vs. Capcom 3 back in the day. Not that I was any good at it, I just mashed buttons picked Deadpool and just mashed buttons, played the computer. But then Fighters got announced, and it was insane how much hype there was for that game, and I followed it so closely. It was crazy, and I I was convinced. I was just convinced that I was gonna go pro. I was convinced. I was like, I'm gonna get good at this game. I'm gonna learn how to be good at it. I'm gonna go to like tournaments and get good. That never happened. But because I'm just not. That's just not my thing. But it really brought me more into, I guess, the greater fighting game community as a whole, and as a result of that, I found new content creators that I really love. And even before that, I mean, when I got into just watching YouTube, I followed a bunch of Dragon Ball creators, and I've been following them ever since. And I still follow them, and I still watch their stuff, and I don't mind shouting them out. I've been following Rhyme Style, and for probably the longest, to be honest, when my my cousin got me into Dokkan Battle, which was really fun, and I still pop into it sometimes. But for a long time, for a number of years there, we were both addicted to that game, and we both spent way too much money pulling for units. But I don't regret it because it made me happy, even if I put myself in financial straits on multiple occasions. Pulling for units and not getting them, and then be like, well, I'll go a little more. I'll go a little more. One more pull. But I discovered, Rhyme Style through that. Of course, one of the biggest influences in the greater community has been Team 4 Star with their Dragon Ball Z Abridged. I discovered that in high school. I think they were on the Frieza saga at that point, when one of my friends, I think we were just talking about Dragon Ball or something, and he pulled it up on his phone, and I watched it, and I just started dying laughing. I was like, this is amazing. And I went home, and I looked them up, and I just started binging all of their videos. And just ever since, every time I find somebody new in that space, as time went on, through a lot of them I discovered through Rhyme Style, to be completely honest. Shout out to Rhyme if you ever see this. But I discovered, C Reacts and Dotto Doya, and the biggest influence on me out of all of the creators that I found through Dragon Ball was Maximilian Dude, who I knew nothing about, but when Dragon Ball Fighters was coming out, I was following everything. And I think Rhyme got invited up to Bandai for a preview event, and one of the other people there was Max. And even though he explained he didn't really have a history with Dragon Ball, personally, he respected it, and he was really excited for what the game itself was. But I ended up finding his YouTube channel, and he made a bunch of character guides, which got me even more hyped up and psyched and thinking that I could, actually be good at the game and go pro with it. But Max is the reason that I realized that I wanted to get into making content myself. And I would never have probably found his, I mean, maybe eventually, but I don't know if I ever would have found his channel if it hadn't been for Dragon Ball Fighters. And Fighters wouldn't exist if Dragon Ball didn't exist. And all of that is thanks to Akira Toriyama, just to bring it back full circle again as to why I'm really making this video. Dragon Ball and Akira Toriyama are the reason why my life is the way it is today, and why I have this passion to create things and share them with people. Even though it's not always an easy thing to do, I truly cherish the ability to be able to do that. And I just want to express my extreme and sincere gratitude towards Toriyama Sensei and Dragon Ball for giving me so many wonderful memories to cherish, so many wonderful experiences, so many wonderful friends, and for eventually leading me towards this path I'm currently on of trying to make things to share with people, and share my passions with people, because I think that's such a valuable thing to be able to do. And Toriyama did that on a scale that is not rare, is rarely ever seen. He did it so well and with such grace and humility that it's truly inspiring. And I just his the news of his passing affected me in a way I wasn't expecting, and in a way I wasn't ready to deal with at first. Um, Even now, I'm still finding it hard to believe. And I'm not somebody who is very easily, who becomes very easily emotional. And it's not some sort of like macho, like, oh, I don't cry kind of thing like that. No. I've just, it's always taken something deep and impactful to really hit me emotionally. Usually the passing of a close loved one, a family member, a friend, a pet, something on that scale. A lot of celebrities, that I have enjoyed their works and whatnot pass, and it's sad to see, but none of them ever hit me on a level like this one has. I've, like I said, been spending the past however many hours since this news hit just engrossing myself in the outpouring of love from so many people, sharing all of their experiences and their stories, sharing their artwork and their music, sharing their passion and love for this thing that I love and that so many love. And it's been very emotional, and I've cried multiple times. Every time I see a new video pop up and I watch it, or a new post with heartfelt words, it just makes me tear up again. And it is sad, and he passed far too soon. He was only 68, That's way too young. But I also want to echo a sentiment that some other people have been echoing, of the fact that it's completely normal and okay to mourn and to cry and to be sad, but we should also be happy and celebrate that this wonderful person shared so many wonderful things with us all and left such an immense and huge positive impact on the world in a way that few ever can. So, in closing, I just want to say again, thank you, Akira Toriyama, for making this world a better place and for inspiring so many millions of people to be better and to share their love and their passions with others. I hope that you find peace in your rest. Thank you.